You plugged in last night at 90%. You wake up, check the app, and something already looks off before you've turned a wheel. Or maybe it's been a slower burn. You bought your Model 3 long range. The sticker said 358 miles, and now 6 months in, 100% charge is showing 311. Nothing feels broken. The car drives fine, but those miles are gone. Here's what most people do at that point. They either panic, book a service appointment, or just quietly accept it as battery degradation. And in my experience working with these cars, that's usually the wrong call. Because a lot of the time, what looks like range loss isn't the battery dying. It's the battery management system slowly drifting out of calibration, combined with a handful of features quietly burning through your charge every hour the car sits parked. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly what to do about it. The BMS recalibration process that can restore miles you thought were gone for good, plus the specific settings and habits that are working against you right now. Let's get into it. 2 different problems that look identical. The first thing worth getting straight is that there are 2 completely separate reasons a Tesla can show reduced range, and they require different responses. The first is genuine. Physical battery degradation. This is the actual permanent loss of cell capacity that happens to every lithium-ion pack over time. Based on fleet data from 2024 and 2025, most Model 3 and Model Y owners see somewhere around 5 to 10% capacity loss over the first few years of ownership, after which the rate of decline slows considerably. Model S and X tend to land around 2 to 2.5% per year on average. That loss is real. It's gradual, and there's a hard ceiling on how much you can recover from it. Good habits slow it down, but they can't reverse chemistry. What people often don't realize, though, is that degradation and inaccurate range display are 2 completely separate things that look identical on the screen. I've seen cars come in where the owner was convinced the battery was shot, and what was actually happening was a calibration problem. The BMS had simply lost track of where the real limits of the pack were. Fix the calibration, and suddenly those missing miles are right back. Here's how the BMS works in plain terms. It doesn't have some magical direct window into each cell. It's running math, counting energy flowing in during charging and energy flowing out while driving. Over time, especially if you've spent months charging between 40 and 70%, doing mostly short trips and never seeing the extremes of the pack's range, that math drifts. The system doesn't know exactly where 100% really is anymore. It doesn't know exactly where the bottom is. So it guesses conservatively and reports less range than you actually have. It's essentially hiding usable capacity from you because it isn't confident in its own numbers. A useful way to picture it: think of a water bucket you can't see into. You only know how much you've poured in and taken out. After months of partial pours and partial sips, with a little unaccounted evaporation here and there, your math is off. Calibration is simply emptying it all the way down, filling it completely to the brim, and now you know the real capacity again. The bucket didn't change. Your measurement of it just got accurate. There's a well-known real-world case of this, with a Model 3 owner who documented her car dropping from 310 miles at full charge down to 260 miles after roughly 11,000 miles of driving. The battery itself was fine. The BMS had drifted. After a proper recalibration, a meaningful chunk of that displayed range came back because it was there all along, just hidden. The BMS recalibration, step by step. Alright, so here's the actual process. I want to walk through each step carefully because the details here matter, and skipping any one of them usually means you end up having to start over. Step 1. Get the battery down below 10%. Drive it down into single digits. 5 to 9% is the target range. I want to address something directly here because there's genuinely bad advice floating around on forums. Some people suggest running the battery all the way to 0 until the car shuts itself off. Don't do that. Lithium-ion cells under deep discharge, especially repeatedly, can develop permanent damage at the cell level that no recalibration will fix. The goal is to show the BMS where the low end of the pack actually is, not to stress it. Single digits is enough. If you're going to be driving down to that level, stay reasonably close to a charger toward the end. As the state of charge drops into the low single digits, the car's available power output starts tapering, and you don't want to be caught on a highway ramp when that happens. Step 2. Let it sit, completely undisturbed, for 1 full hour. This is the step most people underestimate. Once you're below 10%, park the car and leave it alone. Don't open the doors. Don't check the app. Don't turn climate on remotely. Every time you wake the car up during this window, you're interrupting the BMS while it's trying to take stable voltage readings across all the cell groups. It needs a quiet, undisturbed baseline at the low end of the pack to re-establish its calibration reference point. Set a timer on your phone and genuinely walk away for an hour. Step 3. Charge to 100%, then stay plugged in for an hour after. Connect to your home level 2 charger or a wall connector. For this particular process, AC charging is preferable over a supercharger because the slower, steady current allows the cells to balance more gradually and thoroughly. Set the charge limit to 100% and let it run. Here's where I see people stop too early. The car will display 100% on the screen and the charging session technically looks complete, but the BMS is still working. The cells inside the pack are still actively balancing their individual voltages against each other. If you unplug the moment it hits that number, you've only done half the job. Leave it plugged in for at least 1 more hour after the display reads 100%. What you're waiting for is the charger to show near zero energy being added. That's the signal that the balancing is actually done and the BMS has locked in its new reference point at the high end of the pack. Step 4. Drive it immediately after. Once that's complete, don't leave the car sitting at 100% for hours. That high state of charge puts unnecessary stress on the chemistry over time. Go take it for a normal drive, doesn't need to be long, and let the recalibration work through real driving conditions. In terms of results, most owners who do this correctly report somewhere between 10 and 30 miles showing back up on their range display. Not because the battery grew, because the system is finally reporting what was actually there all along. One important nuance worth knowing: if your Tesla is a Model 3 or Model Y standard range with an LFP battery, lithium iron phosphate, which Tesla uses in some RWD variants, the calibration situation is different. Tesla actually recommends charging LFP cars to 100% at least once a week under normal operation. LFP cells need regular full charges to self-balance, so if you've been carefully stopping at 80% on one of those cars to protect the battery, you may have been accidentally starving the BMS of the full charge reference point it needs to stay accurate. Check your battery type under Controls Uncle Software Additional Vehicle Information if you're not sure which chemistry you have. Phantom drain: what's eating your range while you sleep? Now let's talk about something that isn't about calibration at all, but that I'd argue causes just as much frustration for Tesla owners: phantom drain. Under normal conditions, a Tesla should fall asleep within about 7 to 10 minutes after you finish driving or charging. When it's properly asleep, background drain is minimal, fractions of a percent per hour. But there's a whole list of things that can keep the car wide awake: running processors and cameras and sensors, burning through your battery while it sits in your driveway doing nothing. Sentry mode is usually the first place to look. When active, it keeps all cameras, motion detection systems, and onboard processors running continuously. Before recent software improvements, this was drawing somewhere between 7 and 14% of battery per day, potentially 20 to 40 miles of range, just gone before you've turned the key. Tesla has made real progress here. The 2024.38 update brought roughly a 40% reduction in Sentry mode power consumption, and the 2025 updates added low power mode under controls charging, which automatically shuts down the most energy-hungry components when no genuine threats are detected. That's a meaningful improvement. But what most people still haven't done is set up location exclusions. Sentry mode running at home all night, in your own driveway or garage, is almost always unnecessary. Go into the Tesla app, set your home and workplace as trusted locations, and Sentry mode will only activate when you're parked somewhere unfamiliar. You keep the security benefit where it actually matters without burning range every night at home. Cabin overheat protection is another background feature worth checking. It prevents the interior from reaching dangerous temperatures in summer heat, which matters a lot if you regularly have kids or pets in the car. What it also does is keep the car partially awake to monitor interior temperature even when you're nowhere near it. In climates where extreme heat isn't a real concern, or if your car is garaged, turning this off stops that trickle drain. You'll find it under climate settings in the app. The Tesla widget on your phone is sneakier than it sounds. Every time your phone home screen displays that widget, refreshing your battery percentage, showing your car's location, it can trigger a wake-up call to the vehicle to pull fresh data. Tesla improved this significantly in app version 4.35.0, but depending on your firmware and device, the widget can still cause repeated wake cycles that compound over a full day of sitting. If you've been noticing unexplained overnight drain and you can't pin it on Sentry mode, try removing the widget for a week and compare. Data sharing is one that almost nobody has touched. It's buried under Controls, Software, Data Sharing. When enabled, your car periodically wakes up to transmit telemetry back to Tesla. You can turn it off. Tesla will send you notifications asking you to re-enable it. That's fine, just ignore them. Turning it off won't affect your car's performance or features in any meaningful way for daily driving. Dealing with all four of these: Sentry mode exclusions, cabin overheat protection, the app widget, and data sharing can make a real difference in how many miles you wake up to in the morning, especially if your car has been sitting in a lot or on a street overnight rather than a garage. Charging habits that quietly work against you. Let's talk about what's happening every time you plug in, because charging patterns affect both long-term degradation and BMS accuracy in ways that aren't always obvious. The 80% daily charge limit is genuinely good practice for NCA and NMC battery chemistries, which covers most long-range and performance Model 3, Model Y, S, and X variants. The chemistry in those cells is under the most electrochemical stress at high states of charge. Sitting at 100% for extended periods, especially in warm weather, accelerates wear in a way that 80% simply doesn't. Tesla's own documentation recommends reserving 100% charges for when you actually need the range. What I've seen people do, though, is take that advice and go too far with it. They'll cap charging at 80% and also try to never let the car drop below 20 or 25%, thinking they're protecting both ends of the battery. The problem is that if your BMS spends months living in a narrow band between 25 and 80%, never seeing either limit, it gradually loses its calibration reference points. You end up with a car that's running conservative estimates, not because the battery is degraded, but because the system genuinely doesn't know exactly what it has available. The recalibration in Section 2 fixes this, but the better long-term approach is to let the car see a broader range periodically. A full charge once every few weeks is enough to keep the BMS oriented without stressing the chemistry. DC fast charging superchargers generate substantially more heat inside the battery pack than level 2 AC charging at home. Tesla's thermal management handles this reasonably well, but heat accumulates and repeated high-speed charging sessions do add up over time in terms of wear. I'm not saying never use a supercharger. That's what they're there for on road trips and when you're genuinely stuck. But if you've got a level 2 option at home and you're supercharging out of habit or convenience, that's worth reconsidering. One more thing on charging that most people skip: don't unplug and walk away the moment your session ends. Leaving the car plugged in, even after it's hit its charge limit, has a real benefit. Tesla's own manual states that when a car is connected to the charger, it uses power from the wall rather than the battery to run its onboard computers, maintain thermal conditioning, and handle background system tasks. Every hour the car sits plugged in at home is an hour it's not drawing down its own battery. Over a week, that adds up to a measurable difference in retained range. What software updates actually do to your range? Something that catches people off guard, and I've had to explain this in conversations with owners more than a few times, is the relationship between software updates and range display. Your Tesla can wake up one morning looking like it lost 8 to 12 miles overnight without you driving anywhere. 9 times out of 10, a software update installed while you were sleeping changed how the BMS calculates or displays range. This goes both directions. Some updates have corrected overly conservative range calculations, and owners suddenly had more miles showing up, without the battery having changed at all. Other updates recalibrate the algorithm in the conservative direction, and the display drops. Neither of these is degradation. It's the software model being adjusted. The useful response when you notice a post-update range change is to run a BMS recalibration cycle. Let the system re-establish its measurement baselines under the new firmware rather than carrying over the drift from before the update. What's also worth knowing is that firmware updates have directly targeted phantom drain and efficiency improvements. Version 2025.2 addressed specific issues where third-party app integrations were waking the car unnecessarily through older API polling methods. If you're running outdated firmware, you may be experiencing inefficiencies that Tesla already fixed. You're just not getting the benefit because you haven't updated. Keeping the car on current software isn't just about features. It's about getting access to the power management improvements that have been rolling out continuously. Using the right tools to actually track what's happening. Most Tesla owners are looking at the wrong number when they're trying to assess range, and it leads to a lot of unnecessary worry. The figure sitting next to your battery icon on the main screen is based on EPA-rated range, not your actual driving patterns, your current conditions, or how you're using the car. It's a calculated estimate that often runs optimistic compared to real-world results, especially at highway speeds, in cold weather, or with aggressive climate use. Using that number to judge whether your battery is healthy or whether you'll make it somewhere is not a reliable approach. The Energy app is what you actually want to use for both. It tracks real-world efficiency in watt-hours per mile based on your recent driving, lets you toggle between the last 5, 15, or 30 miles as the reference window, and gives you a projected range that reflects how you're actually driving the car rather than how an EPA test drove it. For trip planning, this is the only number that matters. If your watt-hours per mile is consistently high, say above 300, that's a conversation about driving habits and settings, not battery health. On the third-party app side, there's a trade-off that's worth understanding. Apps that track battery health over time can be genuinely useful for spotting real degradation trends. Seeing your capacity slowly declining over thousands of miles gives you actual data instead of gut feelings. But many of these apps stay connected by actively polling your vehicle on a regular schedule, and every poll wakes the car up. An app checking in every few minutes throughout the day, while the car is parked and supposed to be sleeping, will meaningfully increase your phantom drain in a way that directly cancels out some of what you gained from fixing Sentry mode. Look for apps that use Tesla's direct telemetry API. That method retrieves data without waking the vehicle and is a much cleaner approach for passive monitoring. So here's the short version of everything we covered. Your range display drops for two main reasons: BMS calibration drift and background features draining the battery while you're not watching. Both are fixable without a service appointment and without spending anything. If your displayed range seems off, do the recalibration. Below 10%, 1 hour of rest, charge to 100% on AC, stay plugged in an extra hour after it reads full, then go drive it. If you're losing miles overnight, go through Sentry mode exclusions, cabin overheat protection, the app widget, and data sharing, and knock out whichever ones apply to you. The broader pattern here is that most of what people chalk up to battery degradation is actually the system either being miscalibrated or being asked to do too much while parked. Fix those two things and most owners find their range situation looking a lot healthier. Drop a comment below with how many miles you got back. I genuinely want to know how this works out for you. And if there's something specific you've tried that I didn't cover, share it. If you want to see more of this kind of content, subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.